Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And for today's review, I'm going to talk about A Day to Remember, better known as ADTR, and their newest release, You're Welcome. Boy, I've not listened to ADTR in quite a while until recently when I heard about this album, and I decided to do a comparison listen between For Those That Have Heart, Homesick, and What Separates Me From You. I didn't care so much for their first album, and their name was Treason, but I would say that Heartless is one I consider to be my favorite from that album. But after listening to this album, I really saw how time had changed this group. I did miss out on some of their later releases after What Separates Me From You with Common Courtesy and Bad Vibrations. And I wanted to talk about this album because I really loved listening to ADTR in the past. They were one of my favorites then. And I wanted to see what they changed after What Separates Me From You. And while there were some good things to say about this album, there were times when I was thinking, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, where their older stuff was better. So let's dive into the album. Here's a list of all the songs, totaling 14 overall, and running a little over 46 minutes long. This is their first release in over 5 years, and it's also the first release under the label Fueled by Ramen. Bit of an odd name, but whatever. Who pretty much also had their own little drama with Victory Records regarding a lawsuit, but that's a different story. It was produced by Colin Britton and Jeremy McKinnon, who's the vocalist of ADTR, and it was preceded by 5 singles, which would become Degenerates, Mind Reader, Resentment, Brick Wall, and Everything We Need. Now, from what Jeremy McKinnon mentioned in certain interviews, it seemed that they took a different kind of collaborative process, and they also experimented with other sounds that were considered like modern influences. He also emphasized about like the writing process that rap and EDM are known for, and it really brought the band together, and they demoed a good number of songs. I think they were saying it was like somewhere up into like 40 range, I think 42 it was. But regardless, he described the sound as being like more happier. It wasn't in quotation marks, so I guess it's based on our own interpretations of whether it's more musically or lyrically uplifting. One thing that ADTR has always done pretty well was have that blend of metalcore and punk within their music. And that is perhaps their greatest strength because you get that diversity where a good chunk of the songs might be having that metalcore elements with the down-tuned guitars, the growling, the screaming, those kind of things. But then like the choruses would be a little bit more uplifting with clean vocals and a different pattern altogether. But then like the very next song could be like a typical rock song, or punk, or it could be a variant kind of how If It Means a Lot to You was with acoustic guitars and then throw in the rock elements to close out the song. You still get both these influences on this album, and the one thing I really liked was that Jeremy said that the band themselves were not going to delve too far away from their band's core sound. But as I was listening to this new album, it seemed like I was hearing more of the punk elements with the synthesizers, keyboard elements, stuff like that. There were some songs that reminded me of their old work, like Resentment and Last Chance to Dance, Bad Friend, as I put in parentheses. But you know what? When I was checking out the comments, both on YouTube and on iTunes, I was seeing that some people were criticizing it for going too mainstream. And you know what? That's definitely a bad thing too, especially when you're kind of deviating from what you have done in the past and what got you there in the first place. And now you're just starting to do like all this. And it feels like it's a betrayal of sorts. While the diversity is still there, I wasn't really like digging like all the pop elements that they were like throwing in there. I would say some of the singles like Degenerates, Everything We Need, let's see what else was there, Mind Reader. Those ones were definitely good. Not the greatest, but they were still like something. But if I had to say I definitely had a favorite out of this album, it would definitely be Everything We Need. And you know what? It was just because it had such a nice flow to it. I love the way the lyrics were. Kind of struck me as a bit of a love song. And you know what? Everything just like incorporated into it, regardless of what it was, whether it was like MIDI edited drums or God knows what else. It just flowed really well, and I just really love that song too. So I would definitely list that as my favorite from this album. Jeremy's clean vocals still have a strong presence, but he doesn't do a whole lot of the growls and screams that he did on like albums with Homesick and For Those Who Have Hearts. And it's kind of like depreciation of an asset. It degrades over time, especially given like how many shows they've done and the amount of albums they've done. So even though it's good like see him still in the band and they're still producing music, it's just not the same as what it was like on their older albums. Production wise, to me at least, It seemed like it was a little meshy, and at times I thought it was like borderlining with the so-called loudness war, in which case that means they boosted the volume, whether during mixing and mastering, to such an extent that it diminished the overall product. But to put it in short, it just didn't sound as clean as like albums like Homesick for those that have heard, even and the name is Treason, and What Separates Me from You. So for the last bit of critique, I'm going to give you guys the pros and cons of the album and see what you think overall. I'll start with the pros. This was a good album that still had a bit of diversity on it. There was also lyrical content that could be relatable at times. And there were moments where it kind of reminded you of their past works with some of the nice breakdowns, even though there may have been a lot more of the pop elements. But it seemed like the cons really outweighed the pros here. It looked like there was a lot more of the pop elements than there were. And I know that's going to throw off a lot of people, and that seems like their personal preference. The production-wise, it could have been a lot better than what it was. I know I said it was kind of meshy and bordering on the loudness war, so looks like they had to do some work there. And lastly, you don't get a whole lot of like the same vocal ranges that Jeremy used to exhibit on like their past work with. For those who have heard, he had a good amount of growls. Every now and again, you get a nice little metalcore action going there. There wasn't much of that, so that one was perhaps the biggest one. Obviously, a lot of work needs to be done, so let's hope they see the criticism that happens, take a step back, and try to do better on the next one. In conclusion, I'm going to give this album a 5 out of 10. That's my lowest score so far. And it's just because it does not beat out any of their old stuff. It is good that they're back out making music after being away for 5 years, but there is some work that needs to be done, so I'm looking forward to see what they can do in the future. Good luck, guys. So, if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button and leave a comment below about what you think about this album. If you guys know about any bands, or if you're in a band right now, let me know in the comments or on social media. I'll leave the links down in the description below about them, and I can do a review on them if you wish. As always, you're welcome to subscribe and make sure you hit that bell notification so you can see more content like this in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe and stay tuned.